Michelle Markman, a neurodivergent coach, and this is Elsa Ramon, and we're here to talk to you about neurodiversity. Thank you for joining me, Elsa.
Michelle, and I really want to thank you for reaching out to me on LinkedIn. We were brought together by LinkedIn because I think we both follow mutual contacts, and most of them all have to do with neurodiversity, neurodivergence, autism, ADHD. We talk about neurotypical versus neurodivergent. So all of these people that are in our circle have finally kind of brought us two together, and I want to thank you so much for reaching out to me to start these discussions about not just autism acceptance or awareness, but acceptance in our community and all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is a pleasure to be here with you. So, I wanted to start with talking about what neurodiversity is and the difference between neurodivergent and neurotypical brains. Neurodiversity is a big umbrella. So it encompasses everything from autism and ADHD to Tourette's, bipolar. There's a lot of different diagnoses or things that can be under the neurodiversity umbrella. Now, in recent years, a lot of what you're hearing about when people say neurodivergent is ADHD and autism, but there are other things under that umbrella. So, just to be clear, I did want to define what a neurodivergent brain is versus a neurotypical brain. So, neurodivergent brain is going to actually have more neurons in it and more neuronal connections than a neurotypical brain. Every brain has all the lobes: the prefrontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, the hindbrain, and the brainstem. But neurodivergent brains are going to just have more connections and be connected in different ways than neurotypical brains. So that means that we're going to have unique abilities, unique skills, and also some unique challenges that neurotypical brains do not necessarily have. So I just wanted to take a moment to define what neurodiversity is. So you have a neurotypical brain and a neurodivergent brain. Neurotypical brains are going to be just generally your average brain. Most people have a neurotypical brain. There's an estimate that about 15 to 20% of our population has neurodivergent brains or neurodistinct brains. So, what that means is a neurodivergent or neurodistinct brain is going to have more neurons and more neuronal connections in the brain. So they're actually wired differently than neurotypical brains. So every neurodivergent is going to have unique skills, unique abilities, and unique challenges. And each one is different. That's why they call it a spectrum. When we talk about neurodiversity, that includes all kinds of things, not just autism and ADHD, but it can include Tourette's, bipolar, other things like that.
So I think that's one of the challenges to in getting people to understand what neurodiversity is and what neurodivergent means. Because first of all, I don't know that most people, unless they have some kind of direct connection of a loved one who falls under that category of neurodiverse, um, I don't know that people maybe even give it much thought or understand what it even means. They wouldn't be able to define it because the exposure isn't there. So I think it's important that you are defining what it is, and you explain that if you have two brains next to each other, one neurotypical and one neurodivergent, they're both brains, but one is, like you say, wired differently, has a unique set of great skills, the neurodiverse brain, that are extremely beneficial in a lot of situations, but also encounter some challenges. While the neurotypical brain has skills as well, but will not encounter the same challenges as the neurodiverse brain that is uh, wired differently. And I think the first challenge, those of us who do have exposure to neurodiversity, either with ourselves or a loved one, um, is just getting people just to understand that basic difference first. And so I think it's important that you are defining what these things are. And I always personally like to use analogies to help people understand, because sometimes they get lost in these big words. What is neurodiversity? What is neurotypical? What does all of this mean? And it can be kind of intimidating. So I try to give people real life examples. Maybe they aren't the best, but I try to say, look, if you're, uh, I use cooking as an example. If you're cooking a steak and you're cooking a piece of fish and you're cooking a piece of chicken, you're not, they all require different ways of being cooked. You can't cook them all the same way because they all won't come out the same way. And by the same way, I mean you can't cook the beef at one temperature at the same temperature you would cook the fish, and you won't cook the chicken at the same temperature you cook the beef. It's but they all, so if you can accept things like that, why not accept the fact that there are brains that do one thing one way and the others do the other thing the other way, but in the end, the goal is the same, to have a positive outcome, and there are different avenues to get there. um, when you're driving, there are, there's a target you want to get to, and but if you're coming from different parts of town, there is no right or wrong way to get there, as long as you get there. So there are multiple avenues to get to this, say the grocery store, and because somebody goes this road and somebody comes on this road, nobody's right or wrong. It's they're all arriving at the same place. It's just a different way to get there. And I try to explain that to people who want to understand more, that that try to think of divergence in that way, just different ways of getting there, different routes and getting there. And it may be oversimplified, but it's a way, at least I'm trying to start to show people that there are alternate ways to get to end goals. And maybe all these years thinking that there is just one way to do something, or there's a right way and wrong way to do something because of societal influence, we need to put the brakes on that and say, wait a minute, there's a whole section of people who do things differently, and we stand to gain a lot of knowledge from these people who are trying to tell us in their own words that we don't fit a mold. We're a square peg trying to be put in a round hole, and we can also make uh, square shapes too for you to fit into as well. So that's what I try to do when I speak out on social media, like LinkedIn, where you and I met, to try to help people understand in very simple and non-threatening ways why it's important to see, to open our minds and see that people just arrive at the things we all want in different ways.
Absolutely. That's so true. And that's such an amazing way of putting it. I heard recently the definition, or the word that the Maori use for autism is in your own time, is the definition of that word. And that really struck true and resonated with me because I personally, as a late diagnosed autistic adult, have hit my milestones not necessarily on time. It's happened a little bit later. And as you were saying about there being many different roads to get to the same destination, I think that's very true, that different people are going to do things differently and in a different timeline. And that's okay. And it can actually be really amazing and beautiful. And there's a lot of gifts that we've gotten from neurodivergent individuals. Um, it, it's said that it's likely that some amazing artists and inventors were probably neurodivergent, just historical anecdotes of being around them and how they behaved, possibly the inventor of electricity and Albert Einstein and Picasso and things like this. So
And yeah,
again, Elsa,
Tesla,
yes,
the examples can go on and on. Of although we'll never truly have 100% proof that this was true. I think in just learning about neurodiversity and what it entails and what people are like who are on the spectrum, um, these types of people who think at that time who were considered so just avant-garde and just so extreme, um, were actually just so far ahead of their time and did things and thought about things in a different such a different way that it scared people, and that you know, because in their minds it deviated from the norm, right? And but today we have so many wonderful things in our lives, like you said, and so many advances in our lives because there are people throughout history who have been on the spectrum, and under that umbrella of neurodiversity, that we have some of these wonderful things today. I'm not saying that everyone who invented great things and everyone who have you know who's made our lives better we're all neurodivergent, but the likelihood of people like that are that they were neurodivergent is probably pretty high. So the more I learn about neurodivergence and people on the spectrum and all the things that fall under that umbrella, the more I realize that this they're just people who are just wired differently. And I can say the reason why I got into learning about this is because my daughter was diagnosed when she was in fourth grade. I think she was ultimately diagnosed that summer before fifth grade started, but in fourth grade, and I'm so grateful for this counselor. This counselor at her school suggested to me and her dad at the time, that she may be autistic, and because there were some problems in school, the types of problems that those of us who have learned enough and done the work to see, this counselor and the teacher were seeing some of these things happening in school with her. Tough time transitioning from reading circle time to, you know, maybe math time, you know, some of those types of meltdowns that would happen between them, um, the daydreaming, the inattentiveness, the sensitivity to certain things, and I was just so glad that this counselor brought this to our attention because that gave us a chance to have her diagnosed, and also gave us a chance to start implementing therapies, like having her go to cognitive therapy with a therapist and talk about the challenges she's having. And this is with a therapist that was recommended by the person who diagnosed her, who deals with kids on the spectrum and recognizes all the traits and behaviors of people who are neurodivergent. And that helped so much stop this path that she would have gone down, that many late diagnosed autistic people go down this road of being told, why can't you just XYZ? Or you're so smart, why are you failing? Or, and this negative reinforcement that so many people who weren't diagnosed hear throughout their lives over and over and over again. And then, in addition to not being uh, socially uh, fitting in with the crowds of kids as they age and create flicks and you know all those kinds of things, I'm so glad that we knew long before that, so that we stopped that kind of talk in its tracks. We stopped that misunderstanding in its tracks. We reversed course and took a different course. And now she's a freshman in college, and she graduated with high honors from high school. She's incredibly bright and intelligent and kind and sweet and is very understanding of her brain. So, you know, that all started with a counselor identifying and defining what neurodivergence is and what autism is and what ADHD is. It all started with a definition so that we could understand. And so that's why I'm glad you're in our first talk defining these things, because I think that's where it needs to start with people. What is neurodiversity? What does it mean to be neurotypical? What does it mean to be on the spectrum? What does it mean to be ADHD? What does it mean to be under that umbrella of neurodiversity? And so, thank you for starting with that, because I think that's a good starting point for people to slowly start understanding um, the rest of the journey. And it is a journey.
It is certainly a journey. And thank you, Elsa, so much for joining me to talk about this. I look forward to our future talks where we'll discuss things like implicit bias. And again, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I look forward to continuing the conversation and hopefully having other people join in to discuss too their experiences and challenges. Actually, autistic people who can fill out the conversation too. I mean, in addition to you, um,
Yeah,
so that everyone can share their experiences. So at some point, people will start to understand that, we're not made from a cookie cutter, and the sooner we realize that, the more we can make um, everywhere a better place, hopefully for everyone to be able to fit in the way they're meant to fit in.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, Michelle, thank you.